What happens when these really stubborn old border disputes run head-on into something huge like the world's most critical resources, and then, American economic power steps in?
That's exactly the situation we're digging into today.
Mm.
We're focusing on the recent 2025 Cambodian-Thai border crisis.
Yeah.
It wasn't just minor skirmishes over temples. It blew up into full military conflict, forced hundreds of thousands from their homes.
Right, and our mission here is to unpack the sources you gave us because they really lay out a specific narrative. This conflict, this chaos, it wasn't stopped by, let's say, traditional diplomacy.
No, not at all. The sources indicate it was halted quite abruptly, actually, by firm, non-negotiable intervention, basically using economic leverage, that economic muscle, as the main tool to force peace.
So let's set the stage. This crisis ran roughly May to October 2025, and the roots you mentioned go way back.
Oh, yeah, deep roots, back to the 1907 Franco-Siamese Treaty. Classic colonial map drawing, leaving these key areas, especially around ancient temples, really ambiguous. It was almost inevitable conflict waiting to happen over sovereignty.
And when it did happen in 2025, the human cost immediately pushed things towards real fighting. The reports show things escalating until that key date, July 23rd. Something specific happened then.
Yes, a major turning point. A Thai soldier lost his right leg, stepped on a PMN-2 landmine near the border. Now, for listeners, the PMN-2 isn't some old forgotten mine. It's a modern Russian anti-personnel mine. High explosive.
And using those that's
Yeah.
a big deal, right?
Huge. It's a direct violation of the Ottawa Treaty. Fourth country signed it. So using these mines, it forced Thailand's hand. They immediately recalled their ambassador, declared combat readiness. Things got very serious very fast.
Okay, so here's where we see the contrast starting to emerge. The situation's clearly spiraling, needs action, but the initial diplomatic moves just fizzled.
Completely stalled. You had regional bodies like ASEAN offering to mediate. Makes sense, right?
Seems standard.
But Thailand said no. Flat out rejected third-party help. They saw this purely as a national sovereignty issue, something only they and Cambodia could or should resolve bilaterally.
Which signals, I suppose, a real lack of faith in those multilateral regional solutions to protect what they saw as their core interests.
Exactly. A fundamental distrust, you could say. And that stance, whether you see it as strong or maybe counterproductive, came right before the worst fighting in late July. That's when we saw displacement numbers spike. Nearly 300,000 civilians combined. The sources are pretty clear. The regional system couldn't handle it. It needed a bigger stick.
Okay, let's unpack that escalation then, because understanding how bad it got seems key to why the intervention happened the way it did.
Right. So the initial spark, May 28th, was relatively small, if you can call it that. A skirmish in the Emerald Triangle area. One Cambodian soldier killed.
But it didn't stay small. It morphed pretty quickly into something, much uglier. There are accusations, serious ones, of war crimes, especially pointed at Cambodia by Thailand.
Yes, specifically involving BM-21 Grad rockets. These are, unguided, heavy artillery, not exactly precision weapons.
And they hit civilian targets.
Allegedly, yes. The reports detail strikes on a gas station in Sisaket province. At least 8 civilians killed in that attack, including an 8-year-old boy. And it wasn't isolated. There were also attacks on the Phom Dongrak hospital, significant damage, injuries, forcing evacuations.
The numbers really paint a grim picture of those few days of intense fighting. Thailand reported, 16 soldiers and 14 civilians killed?
That's what Thailand reported. Independent analysis suggests the total military and border police deaths were probably over 50. And the displacement figure from Thailand alone was huge, 149,264 civilians. Just immediate, massive humanitarian crisis.
And while all this is happening, diplomacy is just stuck.
Completely stuck. Cambodia tried to take the border dispute to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. Thailand refused to recognize the ICJ's jurisdiction on this, insisted on bilateral talks only.
So even international law mechanisms were blocked.
Blocked. And then ASEAN, with Malaysia chairing, formally offered mediation again. Thailand's answer, still no. Unequivocally no. So you had this complete diplomatic deadlock.
Total breakdown then. Regional talks, international court. Nothing worked because one side just wouldn't engage that way. It seems like something drastic, something external had to happen.
And that external source arrived very quickly, actually.
Yeah.
And with, let's say, economic provision. When Thailand blocked all those mediation offers from ASEAN, China, the U.S. changed its role. It went from potential mediator to, enforcer.
Right. This is the pivot point. The moment American economic power becomes the tool. July 26th. President Donald Trump steps in directly. No vague warnings, no aid packages.
No. An ultimatum, plain and simple. He put out a statement, very direct, saying he'd spoken to leaders from both countries.
And the message.
Unmistakable. He said, and I'm quoting the essence here from his platform, "We happen to be, by coincidence, currently dealing on trade with both countries, but do not want to make any deal with either country if they are fighting. And I have told them so."
Wow. Just laying it out there. No ambiguity. The threat wasn't military, it was purely economic. Trade deals off the table.
Exactly. Think about the impact of that, coming directly from the U.S. president, bypassing all the usual diplomatic channels. It focused minds immediately. It wasn't about appealing to peace. It was about the cold, hard reality of economic consequences.
And it worked.
The results were almost instantaneous. An unconditional ceasefire was agreed on July 28th. Just hours, really, after those calls and that public ultimatum. It really highlights the speed you can get when trade leverage is used directly for foreign policy.
And the final proof is in the pudding, so to speak. The peace deal itself, signed later in Kuala Lumpur, October 26th.
Yes, signed by the prime ministers of Thailand and Cambodia, Anutin Charnvirakul and Hun Manet. But crucially, also co-signed by President Donald Trump. That really cemented the U.S. role as the ultimate guarantor of this particular peace.
It's quite a statement. Did the region acknowledge this directly?
Oh, absolutely. In a pretty remarkable move, Cambodia's Prime Minister Hun Manet formally nominated President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. The citation mentioned his role in restoring peace and stability. That's a huge acknowledgement from within the region that this decisive, perhaps unconventional approach delivered results where traditional methods failed.
Important to note, though, as the sources do, that the ceasefire wasn't a magic wand. Things weren't perfectly stable overnight.
No, not entirely. Accusations kept flying. Claims of abducted Cambodian soldiers, more landmine incidents injuring Thai troops. I think 6 more incidents were reported by late August. But the large-scale fighting, the state-on-state conflict, was stopped, undeniably stopped.
Okay, so this raises that deeper question you hinted at. Why deploy this kind of high-stakes economic intervention for what started as a border skirmish in Southeast Asia?
Right, and the answer, according to the analysis and the sources, brings us to the real strategic driver, critical minerals. The new gold, as some are calling it.
Well,
not actual gold, obviously.
yeah.
We're talking rare earth elements, EREs. Exactly. These are the absolute must-have ingredients for everything from smartphones and green tech to critically advanced weapon systems.
Give us a sense of the scale. How important are they?
Well, consider this. A single F-35 fighter jet needs about 920 pounds of rare earth materials, your electric car. Around 3 kilograms, mostly for the high-strength magnets. Compare that to maybe 100 grams in a standard gasoline car. They are fundamental to military tech and the whole green energy transition.
And the vulnerability here, the reason for the intense focus, is China's position.
Precisely. China has achieved, let's call it near total dominance over the processing and refining part of the supply chain, especially for heavy rare earth elements, the HREs, which are vital for the most powerful magnets used in defense and high-tech applications. They control over 99% of that refined HRE capacity.
99%. That's basically a monopoly.
It's a chokehold. And China has shown it's willing to use it. We saw that in 2025, they slapped export controls on 7 specific HREs and also on permanent magnets themselves. This wasn't subtle. It was weaponizing their supply chain dominance during trade tensions.
So the American response and how it connects back to stopping this border war is about breaking that dependency, securing alternative supply chains.
Absolutely. The U.S. strategy under the administration at the time became hyper-focused on achieving RE self-sufficiency, aiming for somewhere between 2032 and 2035. From that perspective, instability in potential resource regions or along shipping routes, unacceptable, has to be stamped out quickly.
And there's government money backing this push for self-sufficiency.
Significant money. The Defense Production Act, the DPA, was invoked to push about $750 million specifically into domestic RE mining and refining projects. And you also have the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, offering things like a 10% production tax credit. Big incentives for U.S. companies to get into this game.
This also plays into the broader trade picture, doesn't it? This idea of a trade war 2.0.
It does. Unlike the first round, which had kind of broad tariffs across the board, this current strategy seems much more targeted. Laser-focused, you might say, on strategic sectors. We're seeing tariffs over 100% specifically aimed at Chinese electric vehicles, semiconductors, AI components. It's about protecting and building up critical domestic industries against that dominant foreign competition.
Okay, so let's bring it all together. What's the big takeaway for you, for the listener, from this deep dive?
Well, the Cambodian Thai crisis itself was contained, but its resolution, It really showcased a different model of diplomacy. Strong, maybe even blunt, results-oriented action,
Yep.
using economic power as a direct threat. And it achieved stability very quickly, where the sort of slower, consensus-based multilateral approach had completely failed.
It reinforces this idea that the U.S. is willing, perhaps increasingly willing, to act unilaterally with its economic might to prevent conflicts that could threaten global stability, or more specifically, disrupt those critical supply chain diversification efforts.
hmm And there's a final provocative thought tied to the underlying philosophy revealed in the sources. The administration's view seems to be that any trade deficit is essentially a loss, maybe even proof of unfair practices.
We saw that applied directly in Southeast Asia, didn't we, even if temporarily?
Yeah, those initial Liberation Day tariffs, although they got paused because of market reaction, they hit countries with big trade surpluses with the U.S. hard. Cambodia, a much smaller economy, faced a potential 49% tariff rate. Vietnam, with the region's biggest surplus over $123 billion, was clearly in the crosshairs.
So, the final question this leaves us with, maybe for you, the listener, to ponder is this. If the ultimate goal really is to wipe out America's trade deficits entirely, how secure are those export-focused economies in places like Southeast Asia? How long before their success, their manufacturing prowess, gets framed as a national security issue for the U.S., demanding a complete overhaul of how global trade even works?
That tension between promoting stability on one hand and aggressively tackling trade deficits on the other, that seems like the next major challenge brewing in the global system.